Let's start here. Picture the glitter, the wigs, the squeaky voice that sold out arenas before she was old enough to drive. Hannah Montana wasn't just a show, it was a machine that printed an identity. And right in the middle of it stood a teenage girl named Miley Cyrus, who everyone thought they knew, until she started to show us who she really was. You could call her wild. You could call her unpredictable. You could call her confused. But really, Miley's story isn't about chaos. It's about contradiction. And more importantly, how to make peace with it. From Disney's Golden Girl to twerking at the VMAs, from heartbreak ballads to country revival, from wrecking balls to Malibu beaches, she didn't follow a straight line. She spiraled. But that spiral wasn't self-destruction, it was evolution. Because if you look close enough, Miley wasn't trying to erase her past. She was trying to integrate it. The split between girl and character. Every generation gets a pop star who becomes its mirror. Britney had innocence versus rebellion. Gaga had artifice versus authenticity. Miley had Hannah versus herself. She grew up as two people, literally. On screen, she was America's sweetheart, singing about best friends and double lives. Off screen, she was a teenager in Tennessee, trying to figure out what it means to be seen before you even know who you are. That's the Disney paradox. The very thing that gives you fame also traps you in an image that can't grow. You're not allowed to change, not without consequences. By the time Hannah Montana ended, Miley wasn't just shedding a role, she was breaking out of a cage. And like anyone who's been boxed in for too long, her first instinct was to swing wildly in the opposite direction. Cue the shaved head, the latex, the tongue, the controversy, the 2013 VMAs. Wrecking ball. The world gasped, but Miley was finally breathing. The chaos years. Let's be honest, we all thought she was losing it. The media called it rebellion. The critics called it a meltdown. But maybe it was just grief. She was grieving the girl everyone wanted her to be. Imagine spending your childhood pretending to be perfect, smiling on cue, living for applause. And then one day, realizing you can't keep playing that part. The rage, the confusion, the hunger to feel something real. That was the wrecking ball moment. Philosophically speaking, that was her antithesis. The violent swing away from the Disney thesis. Hegel would have understood her perfectly. Every transformation, he said, comes from contradiction. You become something new not by staying balanced, but by clashing with yourself. That's what Miley was doing. She wasn't rebelling against Disney, she was rebelling against stasis. And she did it in the only way she knew how. Publicly, loudly, messily. The world reacts and misunderstands. The internet did what it always does. It picked sides. Half the world said she'd gone off the rails. The other half said she was brave. But what both sides missed was that she was healing through performance. Every outrageous moment, the shock outfits, the music videos, the interviews, was her trying to take ownership of her body, her voice, her choices. It was feminism, but raw and unpolished. Miley wasn't trying to please anyone. She was trying to feel real in a world that preferred her plastic. The wreckage becomes wisdom. After the explosion came the quiet. Albums like Younger Now and Plastic Hearts showed a new kind of maturity. Not the calm after the storm, but the calm inside it. The sound shifted. The voice deepened. The lyrics stopped apologizing. There was still rebellion in her, but it was focused now, grounded. Listen to her talk in interviews today, and you can hear the difference. She laughs at the chaos, not because she regrets it, but because she understands it. The inner child returns. Let's talk about the little girl in all of us, the one who wanted to be loved for who she really was, not just for what she could perform. Miley found her again. That's what her later work is really about. Behind the glam, the raspy voice, the powerhouse performances, there's a softness creeping back in. She stopped running from the Disney version of herself. Instead, she reclaimed her. That's what pop psychology calls integration. Not pretending your past didn't happen, but weaving it into who you are now. Listen to Used to Be Young. It's not defensive, it's tender. She's talking to her younger self, forgiving her. That's not rebellion, that's recovery. And that's what makes this phase of Miley's career her most powerful, because she's no longer fighting for an identity, She's curating one. Feminism, freedom, and reclamation. Miley has always been political, even when she wasn't waving a flag. Her whole existence as a woman in the public eye is political. Every time she took control of her image, shaved her head, sang topless, smoked on stage, it wasn't random shock value. It was feminist reclamation. She was saying, "You don't get to decide how much of me I'm allowed to show." What makes Miley fascinating is that she never stayed in one lane of feminism either. She's fluid. She's the rebel and the nurturer, the loud and the introspective, the artist in control. Fast forward to her 2023 hit, Flowers. You probably remember the way it broke the internet. An anthem of independence wrapped in disco gold, but beneath the groove, that song was pure philosophy. It wasn't revenge, it wasn't bitterness, it was balance. The philosophy of Miley. If you strip the spectacle, Miley's story is really about what happens when you grow up under the spotlight and still manage to find your way back home to yourself. Hegel would say she achieved synthesis. Feminists would call it reclamation. Psychologists would say she achieved integration. But maybe the simplest word is peace. She stopped asking for permission to evolve. She stopped trying to prove she was real. She just started being. That's why her presence now feels so magnetic, because it's not performance anymore, it's wholeness. What Miley teaches us about ourselves. Every one of us has a version of Hannah Montana in our lives, a role we play to make people like us, to fit in, to survive. And every one of us eventually hits our own wrecking ball moment, that collision between who we are and who we were told to be. The trick isn't to destroy that old version, it's to sit her down, hear her out, and bring her along. That's what Miley did. She didn't exile her Disney self, she welcomed her back with boundaries. That's integration, that's adulthood, that's art. We don't become whole by choosing one identity over another. We become whole by learning to let them coexist. That's not just Miley's story. It's everyone's. The forever spiral. Miley Cyrus didn't heal in a straight line. She healed in a spiral. Every era circles back, but higher. The same themes, freedom, love, control, peace, reappear, but with more wisdom, more gentleness. That's how you escape the paradox. Not by running from your past, but by spiraling through it until it becomes art. She's living proof that contradiction isn't a flaw, it's fuel. That you can be wild and wise, messy and meaningful, free and still grounded. That the glitter and the grit can live in the same person. And that sometimes healing doesn't look like quiet. It looks like a woman on stage, smiling, singing her truth, finally at peace with every version of herself. Miley Cyrus didn't destroy her image, she healed it. She didn't have to choose between Hannah and Miley. She learned to be both and neither. And something entirely her own. Because that's the real rebellion. Not breaking the mold, but realizing you never needed one. If this story made you pause, reflect, or see a bit of yourself in her spiral, subscribe for more stories like this. Stories about artists who remind us that healing isn't linear, it's loud, alive, and beautifully human.